The grand hall was no longer a mere room. It had been transformed into a living, breathing sanctuary for BTS's private Valentine celebration. A heavy, velvet warmth clung to the air, carrying the intoxicating scent of crushed petals and expensive cedarwood. Thousands of rose petals, bleeding from deep crimson to a soft, ethereal violet, carpeted every corner. They created a landscape so lush it felt as though the members were walking through a dreamscape rather than a stage. The members stood amidst the floral sea, draped in velvet suits that shimmered under the amber lights. Their presence was commanding, yet there was a softness to their silhouettes that matched the romantic gravity of the evening. But something about the floral arrangements felt deliberate. The flowers weren't just placed, they were woven into intricate celestial maps, mirroring constellations that only a keen eye would recognize as significant to their journey. Jimin leaned in close to a centerpiece, his fingers hovering just inches from a bloom that seemed to grow directly from the dark wood of the table. "It's breathtaking," he whispered, his voice a feather-light caress. "The staff really poured their souls into this." J-Hope nodded, his eyes bright with wonder, mesmerized by the way the candlelight danced off the dew on the leaves. To them, it was a masterpiece of professional design. However, Kim Taehyung stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos. His sharp, feline gaze didn't just look, it searched. He traced the curve of every vase and the tension in every silk ribbon with a silent, calculating intensity. Unlike the others, there was no shock in his expression. Instead, a slow, knowing smirk began to pull at the corner of his lips, the look of a man who had just found the final, hidden heartbeat of a secret. As the cameras zoomed in, the world outside seemed to fade. Millions of armies watched through their screens, breathless, as Taehyung's enigmatic aura took over the room. The atmosphere shifted from celebratory to electric. A heavy silence fell, the kind that precedes a revelation, as everyone waited for the man known as V to break the spell. Taehyung moved with a predator's grace toward a massive bouquet at center stage. It was the crown jewel of the night, rare Smeraldo flowers, guarded by a fortress of pure white roses. He reached out, his long, slender fingers gently brushing a petal. The touch was so intimate, it felt like a secret shared between the flower and the man. "You all see the beauty," he murmured, his deep, soulful baritone vibrating through the open microphones, sending a shiver through the hall. Jin let out a soft, nervous chuckle, trying to lighten the mounting tension. "Well, of course, Taehyung. Whoever curated this has impeccable taste, nearly as perfect as mine." RM nodded, adjusting his glasses while studying the symmetry of the room. The brief was unexpected love. "It's poetic, isn't it? A tribute to the fans. And to us." Taehyung turned then, his eyes twinkling with a playful, dangerous light. He looked at each of his brothers, his gaze lingering just a second too long on one particular face. Then he looked directly into the lens of the camera, a look so piercing it felt as though he was standing in the living room of every viewer. "Wait," he said, a single word that acted like a physical hand on the chest, stopping all movement on stage. He let the silence stretch, savoring the drama of the moment. He was the conductor of this silence, and he played it beautifully. "I know whose idea for the flowers on BTS Valentine event," he finally said, his voice dropping to a confidential, husky register that felt almost like a confession. Jungkook tilted his head, his wide eyes darting between Taehyung and the floral displays. "What do you mean? Wasn't it the visual design team? They've been planning this for months." Taehyung shook his head slowly, a small, triumphant laugh bubbling in his throat. He began to pace a slow circle around the Smeraldo bouquet, like a detective closing in on the truth. "Look at the patterns," he said, gesturing to the ceiling where the flowers hung like stars. "These aren't just shapes. This is the melody line of a track we never released a song written in the dark." Suga, who had been leaning casually against a pillar with his hands buried deep in his pockets, suddenly went rigid. His eyes widened a fraction, a rare crack in his stoic armor. "And these roses?" Taehyung plucked a single red bloom hidden beneath a cluster of greens. This variety only grows in a specific tiny garden in Daegu. It's a very personal signature. The members began to exchange glances, the air thick with a new kind of tension, a realization that this wasn't corporate art, but a love letter. Taehyung chuckled, a sound of pure, unadulterated satisfaction. This wasn't the staff. This wasn't the company trying to be grand. He walked over to Jungkook, leaning in and patting the youngest's shoulder with a lingering, brotherly touch. This came from someone who claims he isn't romantic. His eyes finally locked onto the man at the end of the line, the one who was currently trying very hard to look anywhere but at Taehyung. Min Yoongi-hyung, Taehyung announced, his voice ringing with a mixture of pride and affection. The room erupted. The shock was palpable, a wave of "no way" and gasps. Suga turned his head away, but he couldn't hide the deep crimson blooming on his ears. "I saw the sketches in your studio last week, Hyung," Taehyung said, stepping closer to Suga, his voice softening into something incredibly tender. "You wanted this Valentine's to be about our history, didn't you? Every flower had a meaning. Red for the fire of their debut, purple for the I purple you promise, and the smeraldo for the sincerity that could not be delivered until now." Taehyung ended his revelation by pulling Suga into a firm, warm embrace. The elder man feigned resistance for a second before melting into the hug, a shy, gummy smile finally breaking through. The flowers were no longer just plants. They were a map of their souls. Taehyung had seen through the thorns to find the heart of the man who had planted them. As the night continued, the laughter returned, but the intimacy remained. Taehyung's words had turned a public event into a private sanctuary of brotherhood. Under a gentle rain of falling petals, BTS stood together, grounded in the quiet, profound love that Kim Taehyung had so masterfully unmasked.